But thank you for joining us this afternoon, this busy, I'm sure, Tuesday. We're happy to have you. We will introduce ourselves in greater detail, but my name is Miriam Altman-Reyes. I'm joined by Jenny Bradbury here from Digital Promise. I'm from Brass Ring Ventures, and we are excited to talk with you today about product design strategies to maximize impact. We will spend just a couple seconds or minutes going through the agenda and framing and introductions. We'll get into the bulk of the content of today's session, which is really tactical strategies. We have 7 strategies that we'll go through quickly and hopefully not too stiffly that you can take away and actually implement after the session as soon as today or tomorrow, if you so choose. So that's really the meat of the session today. We do have some resources that we'll be able to share with you, and then we will leave a few minutes for Q&A at the end. A couple of housekeeping notes. The session is 30 minutes, so it'll be a quick and dirty session getting into the overall strategies here that we'll share today. We will share the deck as a follow-up. You should receive an email from us tomorrow. So don't worry too much about rigorously and vigorously jotting down all the notes. You'll have everything that we're sharing. And like I said, there will be a Q&A at the end, so please feel free to enter your questions either into the chat or into the Q&A section, and we'll get to that when we get to the end as well. So we wanted to get a quick start by having a sense of who's in our virtual room today. So you should see a poll pop up in just a moment or two here. Thank you very much, facilitator friends. So who's in our virtual room today? A couple questions just to warm us up. Where's your company based, or where are you based if you're not part of a company? What is your core role or function? What is your company stage, if applicable? And what's your biggest goal or challenge? You know, sometimes this is a hard one to pick because there's so many different things that that startups in particular, which is I think the primary group that we have here today, are trying to solve for. But if you can try to choose one that's a primary focus, that would be great. Just trying to get a sense of what's kind of top of mind for you, where you're coming from as we frame the day today. So we've got almost full participation. I think we have maybe a couple folks who haven't participated. If you'd like to enter your information, please feel free. We'd love to get 100% participation if you can. Get about 10 more seconds just in case. And if you're just joining us, we're only 4 minutes in here. We are completing a quick poll, trying to get a read of the room. Who's with us today? Where are you based? What's your role or function? What's your stage? And what are your biggest challenges? All righty. Well, with that, I think we're going to conclude the poll and share out our results. We have most of our participants today joining us from the US and Canada. We have a couple of folks represented from Europe, which is fantastic. Key role or function, lots of founders in the room, but also sales leaders and other. Always curious to hear who the others are. Sometimes we get some investors in here and others. So if you're comfortable sharing where you're coming from, it's always great. Company stage, a couple pre-revenue, a couple earlier stage. We've got a pretty early stage group today, which is fantastic. Everything we're going to share today is going to be applicable to you, regardless really of the stage that you're at, but definitely for those earlier stages. And biggest goal or challenge, a pretty equal split between sales and marketing execution and fundraising. So thank you for participating in the poll, really appreciate it. And we'll continue to move on to our next slide if we can. Bear with me one moment. We end our poll. Okay, fantastic. Great, so today you're gonna walk away with 3 core takeaways. The first is an understanding of the value of feedback in product design to help drive both business and impact objectives. The second is tangible strategies to help build a feedback loop that's informing product design and roadmap development. And third, we will be able to share resources and supports to help you implement these strategies. Before we dive in too deep, wanted to just give you a little more context for who we are and why we're here and why we're talking about these topics today. My name again is Miriam Altman-Reyes. I am founder and CEO of Brass Ring Ventures. We are a dual startup studio. We provide advising as well as strategic and execution support around a number of different topics I'll get into in just a moment, to founders of edtech and workforce technology companies, I come to this work initially as an educator in New York City public schools many years ago, and then as a founder of a company called Kinvolved, which I led as CEO for about 8.5 years before we were acquired recently by PowerSchool. Jenny, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Bradbury with Digital Promises Center for Inclusive Innovation. And at the center, everything we do is about co-design and co-research with folks who are in greatest proximity to edtech and other solutions. So we engage students and teachers and community members in co-designing, co-researching to make sure that the products that are getting developed meet the needs of those who are going to be using them on a regular basis. So prior to this role, I also started as a classroom teacher, but then transitioned to roles in for-profits and nonprofits focused on content and product development. So good to see you all.
And just a little bit more context, why are we as Browstring Ventures and Digital Promise coming here together today to talk about these topics? We work closely together to really help early stage companies drive towards that double bottom line that's really important in this space, both a focus on equitable impact as well as business effectiveness. Browstring is slightly more skewed, I would say, towards kind of the business effectiveness lens, and then Digital Promise is slightly more skewed towards the kind of impact and product development side, but we overlap and we work together. And so we're excited to share what we know with you all today. Shared a little bit already about our organizations, and so we'll keep this slide short, but again, you'll receive this deck as a follow-up so you can learn more. We also will be sharing our contact information at the end of the session today in case you'd like to reach out. So the why. It's really important to dig into these topics because we want to make sure that as companies at any stage, we're really focusing on engaging customers, prospects, and end users to really help inform the product strategy, the roadmap direction, and the priorities. We know based on personal experience, based on research in the field, that this will have 3 really positive outcomes. First of all, helping maximize value, that financial and impact value that we're focusing on dually today. It will help your organization save money, which especially for early stage organizations is critically important, as you all know way better than I need to share with you. And it'll really help reduce time to market. And Jenny, I'll let you share a little bit more.
Great. So as it says at the top of this slide, our work at Digital Promise is focused on designing with and for learners, and we focus primarily on the needs of historically and systematically excluded learners. And this slide really illustrates that those learners who are often low income and students who are Black, Latinx, and Indigenous are in fact becoming the majority of learners in our public schools. So while designing for this group of learners may have at one point felt like designing for the margins, it's now really designing for the majority. And I think this speaks to that double bottom line that by understanding how best to meet the needs of these learners, you're actually going to be targeting the group that will become your biggest population of users, not long from today. So
awesome. Thanks, Jenny. So let's dig into the tactical strategies, the things that we're going to share with you that you can take away today. We have 7 strategies to get through in a pretty short period of time. The first 3 I'll discuss. These really focus a bit more on the kind of business effectiveness side of the coin. And then strategies 4 through 7, I'll turn over to Jenny to talk through as they focus a little bit more on the product development side of the coin. So strategy number 1, developing a discovery to commercialization process. At a very high level, this includes 5 steps: initial outreach, discovery, analysis, wireframing, and drafting and go-to-market. That can kind of go hand in hand, building out the product wireframes while you're thinking about your go-to-market strategy, and then executing what we call an EAP, or an early adopter program, or early adopter plan. A successful process will enable roadmap prioritization, and it'll confirm market feedback to ensure that commercialization potential is there before you develop the products. The idea is, you might have heard of things like lean startup methodology. The idea is to spend as little resources as you can before you've truly validated both your product as well as the strategy that goes along with that when it comes to go to market, your pricing, your differentiation among competitors, how you're going to distribute your product. Try to get as much validation as you can before you expend resources on actually building that out. So that's kind of that's strategy number one, is really building out that process. And it's critical at all stages. It's critical when you're just building out your company and your product for the very first time and getting out into the market. But it's also a strategy that I can say, speaking from my experience, it can evolve for many years. And even at Power School as well, after that, when I was working on the product team, we continued to deploy this type of a process as we were releasing new particular features as well, continuing to try to validate, again, both the product itself as well as the go-to-market plan before we spend too much time and resources on things, making sure the customer really wants it and solving pain points. So strategy number two is creating what we call a customer advisory board, or a CAB is the abbreviation that some people use. A 5-part process, again, starting with identifying the right types of targets and members, recruiting those members, making sure you have a strong and coherent onboarding process, launching the board itself, and then ensuring you have that consistent feedback loop. We know that a successful CAB will include existing or prospective customers who will provide deep insight into how key personas like them think, feedback on your roadmap, and input into the go-to-market strategy. So there's lots of different ways to kind of think about who do you add to this customer advisory board, who are the right targets, and there's different ways to think about the strategy. Some of the areas would be geographically, where it's important that your customer advisory board members might be. Is it that you want a broad range, or you want to focus on a particular region? What are the titles or personas that they have? How much experience might they have in the market? Questions like that. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of strategy number two. And then the third strategy is to evaluate and report on impact. This is generally a 6-part process that we suggest, starting with creating tools or accessing existing tools for data collection, then actually performing that data collection process, collecting both qualitative and quantitative data where it's possible, analyzing that data to identify key trends and themes, which is the 4th stage in the process. And then from what you've learned and from your analysis, actually developing and writing out a narrative, and then eventually distributing this. Who does this really depends on, again, your resources, your stage of company. I can tell you from my experience at Convolved, when we were merely 2 co-founders with no team and we were part-time, we just did this entirely on our own. We had 1 pilot school, we gathered the data, we went through this process, we developed a report, and we were able to use that report to not only get additional schools on board in the following school year, but also to get our first investors on board as well. And we continued this process at Convolved all the way through to our acquisition by Power School when we were a much bigger organization. So you can do this at every stage. It looks a little bit different every stage as well. A solid impact reporting process will take typically 3 to 9 months and will yield data to, again, inform the roadmap, but also a complete report that will support sales, marketing, and fundraising efforts. So you can kill multiple birds with one stone with a strategy. And I'll hand it over to Jenny to talk through strategies 4 through 7 with us.
Great. So we at Digital Promise support edtech companies in a broad variety of ways, but these are 4 strategies that we wanted to share with you today. And so I'm going to walk through them one at a time. So Miriam, if you don't mind going to the next slide. The first strategy is focusing on learner variability. So many of us in education were probably taught at one point that there are a variety of different types of learners. We're visual learners, or kinesthetic learners, or auditory learners. And what learning sciences has revealed to us in the last 20 years is that that way of thinking about learning is actually not accurate, because we are all different types of learners in different contexts. And so that is really what learner variability is about, is understanding that we have different learning styles, we have different strengths and different needs, depending on what we're learning, depending on where we're learning and how we're learning. And so we at Digital Promise have developed a variety of tools to support both educators and product developers in unpacking what learner variability is and understanding how to apply it in your work. So Linked here in this slide, there is a brief paper that talks about what learner variability is. There's a video tour which introduces you to a tool called the Learner Variability Navigator, where you can dig into different elements of learning styles and look at specific strategies and resources related to each of them. And then probably most relevant for this audience, there's a product assessment tool. So you can enter information about your product and ways in which you are already addressing multiple learning styles. And then it will provide for you an analysis of how well you're addressing certain learning styles, and then provide strategies for how you might address additional ways of learning. So Miriam, if you'll go to the next slide, this is just an example. On the left, you see a variety of different learning factors, and you'll see that there are different sort of shades because these factors are all interconnected. And so as you play around with the Learner Variability Navigator, you'll see that a factor such as literacy environment is strongly correlated with other factors like motivation, long-term memory, et cetera. So you can understand sort of the relationships between these learning factors, look at strategies related to them. And then on the right-hand side, you see a screenshot from the product assessment tool where you can go in and select factors that you want to better support with your tool. So I have in this screenshot identified factors that we know are often associated with students who have been historically and systematically excluded. And what that tool will do once you've identified the factors you want to address is it will provide for you specific strategies you could build into your product that would help you better meet the needs of those learners. And totally free, so definitely strongly encourage you to check that out and take advantage of it. The second strategy we have here is actually kind of a set of strategies, but we've developed a series of trainings for edtech companies focused on best practices in designing with and for excluded learners. So we start off with an introduction to co-design and co-research. We then have a second module that focuses on meeting the needs of excluded learners, where we really dig into the Learner Variability Navigator. We talk about what we know about how to design products for to be culturally relevant. The third module is really focused on designing with evidence. So how do you bake the learning, what we know from the learning sciences, into your product development? How do you collect the right types of data to inform your product development and also to demonstrate to current and potential customers that your product either is showing evidence of promise or is in fact, if it's more mature, showing evidence of impact. And then the fourth module is really about building your product narrative and roadmap, or your logic model, which if you're familiar with the ESSA tiers of evidence here in the US, the lowest level of evidence, which many buyers are now looking for, is a logic model that shows kind of the thinking behind the connection between your product and how it's going to achieve student outcomes. So these can be offered, you can sign up for one of the modules, or you can take them as a 4-week sequence. And we are going to be offering them a couple times a year starting in the next couple of months. And then on this next slide, this is just an example of what you will get in these modules. It's really sharing out best practices from our experience co-designing and co-researching with teams. And really, a lot of our work starts and remains centered in building relationships and trust, because education is fundamentally a relationship-based business. Although there is an emphasis on evidence, the number one reason that most people today decide to purchase an edtech product is word of mouth. So building strong relationships with your current and potential customers and really investing in those relationships can help with a really strong co-design and co-research process, but can also help greatly with converting those co-designers into customers and helping you then to gain access to additional customers through their relationships. And if you'll go to the next slide. So strategy 6 is what we call RPIPs. You may be familiar with research practice partnerships, and we've added industry because really we think it's very important for edtech providers, particularly early stage edtech providers, to have opportunities to do rapid cycle R&D with district partners and with researchers who can help you quickly gain insights so that you can innovate quickly and get to market and improve your product through cycles of innovation. So we have a team here called our Learning Experience Design team at Digital Promise that has been running RPIPs with a number of different companies over the last year or so. And they're really eager to connect with more companies who are interested in doing this type of rapid cycle R&D, where they help you build essentially that customer advisory board. They draw on educators from our networks as well as leaders from our League of Innovative Schools, and then bring in research partners who can help support you in this rapid cycle R&D. So that's strategy 6. And last but not least, strategy 7 are our product certifications. So we have heard many, many times over the years that our district leaders feel inundated with education technology, and they are trying to understand which products work and which products will work for their students. And so in response to that desire, we have started to create a series of product certifications where companies can apply for a certification. We have an independent board that reviews the product against a rubric. And then if it meets the criteria, they will issue the certification. If it doesn't meet the criteria, they will provide supports and feedback so that the company can then reapply for the certification. But once the companies have earned these certifications, it helps them stand out amongst potential competitors because they have sort of a seal of approval from Digital Promise. Our certifications also show up in the ISTE EdSurge product index and learn platform. So if you earn it with us, it will also show up in those other places that that customers often go to see whether products are high quality. And on the right here is just a quick snapshot of some of our certifications. We have one that focuses on products built to support learner variability. We have one focused on products that integrate learning experience design. We have one that is about practitioner-informed design, so really design that involves the voices of users. And then one of our most recent ones focuses on racial equity in AI design. So if you'll go to the next slide, this is just a quick sample of some of the companies who have applied for and earned these certifications, and you'll see that there's a fair amount of overlap. So we have quite a few companies who have come and started by focusing on one certification and then gone on to earn additional certifications. And so there are, we encourage you to come and check those out. Back to you, Mary.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah. And so as we quickly jump over into the Q&A in just a moment, thanks for adding your questions. Seeing a couple of those come through, keep them coming. Just want to talk about some additional supports that each of our organizations, either independently or in unison, can provide to ventures that are on the call today. So with regard to discovery to commercialization process, Brass Ring is really focused on supporting with advising, implementation, and execution of this process. When it comes to the customer advisory board, which we always get lots of questions about, we've got a couple that we'll answer in a moment. We can support with member sourcing, setup, management, and facilitation. And in impact reporting, support with tool creation, data collection, analysis, writing, review, design, and distribution. Any of those parts in the process are areas where we can also help. And Jenny, I know you went through a couple of these already, but we'll let you add any additional comments that you'd like to add.
Sure. So yes, in addition to the trainings that I mentioned, we also provide one-on-one consulting with folks to go deeper into specific topics that we cover in the trainings. We do help teams with educator engagement. So I mentioned as part of our RPIP program, we can help teams build educator advisory boards who can serve as co-designers throughout the process. And then we also at times provide opportunities to engage with school district leaders through our League of Innovative Schools. So lots of ways to engage with us and that we can help connect you to others in the ecosystem.
And just very quickly, for Breastfeeding's part, sharing a bit about the different companies that are in our portfolio, all different stages, all over the world. Some of you are on this call today, and you might recognize some of these names. So I wanted to share that as well. And then let's see, let's see, back here, sorry about that. As we are getting to the Q&A, just wanted to call out that in this slide deck, you will receive a number of different resources that we have referenced here today. So let's get to the Q&A that we've been talking about. Lots of questions here. I'm going to start with a question from Beatrice. How might you convince or incentivize a prospect to join a CAB, a customer advisory board? It's a great question. We know that the companies on the call here today are extra resource strapped because you're really early stage, but of course, it is commonplace and but not required to offer a stipend of some kind. And that can be either provided in the form of cash as like a consulting fee to participants. It could also be provided in the form of a donation to a foundation. Sometimes like districts have foundations of their choice, or even back to another nonprofit in the field. Or you can, if you're a for-profit, which I think many of the folks here today are, you can offer it in terms of small stock options. Speaking from my experience at Convolve, we had advisors, both customers and prospects, that took advantage of any of those different options. So that's just like the monetary way, but most of the time people aren't really looking for monetary incentivization. They really are just excited to be able to, support and help shape the development of a product that they believe in, and, supporting founders that they've really made a good connection with. So you might be surprised that the incentives sometimes don't have to be as significant as you think. I'm happy again to talk about that further offline.
And I'll just jump on, definitely agree with everything that Miriam shared. I think one of the best ways to incentivize advisors is through transparency and accountability, showing them very explicitly how the input that they're giving you is impacting the product. Because it's really exciting to educators when they give input to a product developer to see that that product has now been improved as a result of that impact, and that becomes kind of a self-reinforcing cycle. So I actually think that is the greatest incentive that you can provide to your advisors, is just letting them know and showing them very quickly and easily kind of how they're helping to make the product better.
Absolutely, great point. Fantastic. And then we have a question from Amira about the ESSA rating. Is the ESSA rating by them, or is it self-rated? Jenny, I'll maybe let you answer that question. Happy to jump into.
Sure. So the ESSA rating is, it is not done by the Department of Education. So they've set the criteria, and then the onus is essentially on the company to demonstrate that they have aligned to certain tiers of ESSA. We actually, so Learn Platform, their platform does assess companies and then show which tiers they're aligned to. We're actually in the process of revamping our evidence-based product certification to show specifically which tiers in ESSA the product aligns to. So in the certification space where we are active, that is one way for companies to be able to demonstrate to potential customers or current customers how you align and at what level. And it really has to do with how much evidence you have of impact. So 4 is kind of the entry level. Do you have a logic model? And that's really become sort of table stakes at this point. Most customers are looking for that as a baseline. And then above that is, level 1 is having done a randomized controlled trial, which is expensive and time consuming and takes a long time. And so, that's a very hard level to reach, but reaching the intermediary levels is actually much more accessible, and our product certifications can help signal to the field when you have done that.
I know we're just a little over 3:30, but we have one final question here that we'll try to answer for you before we sign off. Coming from Derek, how much do product certifications matter to educators, and what types of certifications are there? From compliance, design to learning science.
That's a great question. And I unfortunately, the answer is it depends. So do they matter to educators? I think that they increasingly matter to educators. I think, we are hearing much more in the field about educators wanting to know what level of ESSA rating a product has, wanting to know whether a product has gotten the ISTE seal, which talks about it being accessible in a variety of different ways, it demonstrating impact of learning, whether it has earned one of our product certifications. I would say the 3 big organizations, and they're the ones we partner with who are doing this work, are Learn Platform, ISTE, and Digital Promise. I think they matter a lot to the buyers, right? The customers. So superintendents, chief technology officers, chief academic officers. I'm not sure that they matter as much to individual classroom teachers, but they certainly help with sort of clearing through the noise, right? I mean, probably better than anyone that these folks are getting approached constantly by different companies wanting to sell them solutions. And so the more that you can do to differentiate your company by showing that you have been certified by a third party, the better able you will be to sort of cut through that noise.
One thing I would just briefly add is there's also sort of research certifications with the ESSA ratings as well. So in addition to Learn Platform, there's also evidence for ESSA that's conducted. That's a platform that is managed by Johns Hopkins University, and you can submit research studies that you've had done, and they can evaluate them and then potentially put them on the platform as well. And in addition to everything that Jenny said, the other thing that's worth mentioning is sometimes funding is actually tied towards districts purchasing products that have a certain level, certain tier of evidence. And so that's a motivator as well to consider sort of on the research side, less on the product certification side. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. Great questions today. We really appreciate your time and your extra 4 minutes, knowing you're all busy, and I think everyone stuck with us, which is really fantastic. We are very happy to be in touch with you. Feel free to reach out to us via emails. And again, you'll receive this deck from today, everything that we reviewed today, links, as well as ways to follow up with us in an email tomorrow. So keep your eye on your email, and thanks again for joining. Have a great afternoon.